analyze something about the Palestine Israel thing. So we have to, a lot of people always want to argue from, they always want to start from a certain year, right? They'll start from, I don't know, 1948 or 1965. Really, the best year to start from, I would say, is 1882. Why? Because only because this specific graph gives me information about that year. Maybe another graph will give us a different year. But in 1882, there was only 24,000 Jews living in Palestine, right? And they already lived there probably from a while ago. And then there was only 276,000 whatever else, right? Could be Muslims or Christians, right? And now all of a sudden this number gets a lot bigger, and I'm pretty sure it tells us right here. Interestingly, Zionism as a political movement is dated to 1882, right? So that's where we start. Now we look, small groups of Jews dispersed through Europe began to cooperate. Da da da. The first, as they call it, Aliyah, which is a immigration between 1882 and 1903, brought quite a few, right? That's 30,000 Russians, right? And that's like, not a huge difference, but it's something notable. That's a lot of people, right? They go from 8% of the population to 13. Between 1903 and 1914, the second Aliyah is 40,000, right? So now by here, you got this many people. That's a huge difference, right? You know? And so, people act like, oh, why were the Arabs fighting them? I don't know, maybe because now there's a lot of them, and, people don't understand. Look, if you look at, for example, Kurds, why do Kurds want their own state? Because there's a lot of them, and they have their own language, and, they're like, oh, we want to have our own country. So the more people who come in, the more they're going to want their own place, right? So let's keep going. And then we keep going, and eventually, um, yeah, this is the main point, right? So it kind of slows down at this point. But over here, that's quite a bit of people, right? It's like 17% of the population at that point. Well, here too, 1922, it becomes 17% of the population. Of course, that's going to cause tension, right? So these immigrations are causing, it's almost like another state, so to speak. We could keep reading. 82,000 for the Balkans, right? And then at the end of 1931, this many were living in Palestine. 70, yeah, it says the same thing here. Uh, 15% of the population, and we could keep going. Let's try to get more numbers. Okay, from 1932, right? Because the Nazis, they were scared of them, became a big thing, right? 247,000 newcomers, right? That's a huge thing. Now, remember, at the time, it was the British who controlled Palestine. So I'm pretty sure the, Muslims or Palestinians, Arabs, whatever you want to call them, they couldn't, they had no real say in the immigration, right? The British were like, whatever. They kind of just let it happen at this point. So, that's so many people coming in at that point. And that's what year? 1939. And it says it here 440,000, right? And even like if you go to 1946, that's like half the population, right? Even though it's only 30%, if you just compare these two numbers, that's quite a big, like they're almost half here. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Of course, they're going to fight each other. Like, they're always like, oh, the Jews, they're just, like, oh, the Palestinians are always the aggressors. I mean, if that many people are immigrating, of course you're going to start feeling threatened. Like, wow, like this is a whole new country coming in. And you could read about this if you want. This is a college article, so it's not like I'm making things up. Yeah, I mean, I find something interesting. But you get the point, right? That's a lot of population growth. Like people always want to start from here. Like whenever they read the history of it, what does this say? Yeah, they always want to start from 1948. The ironic thing is, from 1948, they're already 82% of the population. Yanni, what do you think happened? What do you think happened here? Right? I mean, that's it. And then people always say, "Oh, let's look at the 1947 thing." Hold on. Hold on. Let me just pause it real quick because this thing is glitching. Yeah. So what they always say is like, "Oh my God, the Palestinians never accepted any peace deals from the United Nations." Basically, what happened is that in 1947, at this point, this was the population 600,000. Geez, they got to 32%. And they said, look, here's what deal we're going to give you. We're going to give all this land to the Jews, who are at this point are only 30%. So why are they getting 60% of the land when they're only 30% of the population, right? The rest of it goes to these people. You know what I mean? And that's the Arabic people, as you can see. So obviously they're going to reject it. Like, dude, we're 68% of the population. You're only giving us this. That's a ripoff. And they're like, oh, the Jews always accept the deals. Look how good we are. The Palestinians are no good. Like, yeah, you came and immigrated over 50 years. You immigrated this many people. Obviously, we're not going to accept the freaking deal. Jeez. Like, so, I mean, and now look at this. Like, the percentages. This is the percent of Jews, by the way. Really high. I mean, now it's actually going down, which is funny because there's too many birth rates or whatever, but still, like, right? And they always complain, like, oh, they don't want to accept the deals. And they were only 30% of the population, but somehow they got like, that's like 60% of the land. I mean, it looks like it in my eyes. It's at least 50, and you weren't 50% of the population, so why are they getting so much of the land? Of course, I'm going to reject that deal, right? So really, it had everything to do with immigration, right? And even today, you look at, for example, Europe. They don't like that so many Muslims are immigrating, and it's understandable because if they become 50% of the population, that's like you know that divides the whole country, right? So it makes sense to want to control immigration, and if you don't control it, that's what happens, like civil wars and stuff like that. Right? Like we could look at it again. Look, 24,000. That's really not much. About 8%, pretty manageable. At this point, 3%. Pretty quickly gets to 13%. And then it drops down, right? But then it goes back up in 4 years. I mean, I guess that's kind of yeah. I guess percentage wise, whatever. Then it gets to 17%. Well, it's already there at 17, which is pretty high, right? Then all of a sudden 28%. That's huge. Now you're wow, like you could see why there's a conflict at that point. Right? That's quite a bit of people who keep coming in. And I think at this point the British, let me see when the British controlled it. Let me pause real quick. Yeah, so it started in 1920, all right? So, immigration was, there was some immigration before that, but after 1920 it gets really crazy, right? So I guess British kind of didn't control it, and there were some problems in Europe where they were like, "Oh, we got to get out of here." Pause again. Okay, so actually there was immigration quotas, but I guess they didn't do enough. 'Cause it does say immigration quotas here, right? So they were trying to control it, right? But it sounds like it just got too quick because they were all coming in at the same time because of a lot of anti-Semitism in Europe. Keep going. Yeah, eventually they started because of the quotas, right? The mandatory Palestine quotas. British government, after Nazism, they started doing illegal immigration, right? The second immigration they call Aliyah, and it's quite a few people, I guess. 1933 to 1948, right? So we could look at that, right? That's a pretty big increase. Well, not huge, but it's enough. So really, that's what it comes down to, right? Is so much immigration that eventually you get two states. That's what I mean. People act like that doesn't happen. It does happen, and that's why there was a conflict. I think that's it. Only a video.